Hello to all fans of Naruto Lemon. I will post all Naruto Lemon Yaoi, Yuri, or Naruko Lemon stories only on the Boosty channel because Uncle YouTube condemns this. Therefore, I invite everyone who wants Naruto Lemon content to my Boosty channel. Good luck.
お前はどこまで見えている俺の死に様か
Hello everyone, it's Rina here. Today, I've got an unusual and awesome storyline for you. I'm looking forward to tons of engagement from you all, and I hope you enjoy listening. Chapter 1, The Darkness Within. The cold, silent night settled over the village of Konoha, a blanket of serenity that masked the storms brewing within one individual. Naruko Uzumaki stood at the edge of the Hokage monument, her blue eyes fixed on the horizon. The village she had fought so hard to protect, the place she called home, now seemed distant, like something she could no longer fully grasp. The moonlight reflected off the monuments of past Hokage, casting a pale glow over the stone faces, yet none of it seemed to reach Naruko. Her blonde hair whipped around her face as the wind picked up, but she barely noticed. The only thing that she could focus on was the growing presence inside her, a presence that had become a part of her life ever since she could remember. Kurama, the nine-tailed fox sealed within her, had always been there, watching, waiting. But it wasn't the same Kurama that everyone believed her to carry. It was something far darker, far more dangerous. Dark Kurama, the twisted, shadowy side of the powerful beast, had started to awaken. Naruko had felt it for weeks now. The way his voice crawled into her mind when she least expected it, the way his sinister laughter echoed in her dreams. It was as if the darker half of Kurama was gaining strength, breaking free of the seals and walls she had spent years building around him. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, frustration bubbling up in her chest. "I won't let you take over," Naruko muttered under her breath, her voice shaky, barely audible against the howling wind. But inside her mind, Dark Kurama was listening. He always was. "You think you have a choice, little girl?" The voice was deep, malicious, dripping with contempt. "I've been biding my time, waiting for you to weaken. And now, you're almost mine." Naruko squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block him out, but the words slithered into her consciousness like a poison, filling her thoughts with dread. Ever since the Fourth Great Ninja War, she had grown stronger, so much stronger than anyone could have imagined. She had mastered her chakra, formed alliances, and even unlocked the powers of the Sage of Six Paths. But nothing could have prepared her for this, for the darkness that lurked inside her own soul. "Shut up," she hissed, gripping her head as if she could physically force him out. Her heart pounded in her chest, the weight of the inner battle pulling her down, suffocating her. "I won't let you take control." Dark Kurama chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent shivers down her spine. "You already have, Naruko. You just don't see it yet." She stumbled back, her knees buckling as the weight of his words pressed down on her. A surge of chakra pulsed through her, uncontrolled, wild. She could feel it burning through her veins, threatening to burst out at any moment. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she fought to suppress it, but the more she struggled, the more she realized how close she was to losing control. "No," she whispered again, though her voice was barely a breath now. "Not yet. I'm not ready." Suddenly, a soft thud behind her broke the silence. Naruko spun around, her heart still racing, her hands instinctively reaching for her kunai. But the figure that stood before her was no enemy. It was Kakashi. The silver-haired shinobi looked at her with his usual calm demeanor, though his one visible eye held a flicker of concern. He had been watching her for a while now, sensing the unease that had settled over her ever since the end of the war. Though he never pressed her for answers, he was always there, like a shadow, ready to step in if things spiraled out of control. "Naruko," Kakashi's voice was soft but firm, pulling her back from the edge of her panic. "You're out here again." Naruko's grip on the kunai loosened, and she let out a long breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." It was a lie, and she knew Kakashi could see through it. But he didn't push. He never did. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze fixed on her face, searching for something beneath the surface. "You've been pushing yourself hard," Kakashi said after a moment of silence. "Too hard, maybe." Naruko clenched her jaw, turning away from him. She didn't want to talk about it. Not now. Not when Dark Kurama was watching, waiting for any sign of weakness to exploit. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice strained. "I just needed some air." But Kakashi wasn't fooled. He had seen the signs, the sleepless nights, the way she avoided training with others, the distant look in her eyes. He knew something was wrong, even if she refused to admit it. "Naruko," he began, his tone gentle, "whatever it is you're dealing with, you don't have to do it alone." Alone. That word hit her harder than anything else. Despite everything she had gone through, despite the friends she had made, the battles she had won, there was always a part of her that felt isolated, cut off from the rest of the world. The burden she carried was unlike anything anyone else could understand. How could they? How could they know what it was like to have a demon inside you, constantly fighting for control? "I can handle it," Naruko said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kakashi's gaze softened, and for a moment, he looked as though he might argue. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped back, his hands sliding into his pockets. "Just remember," he said quietly, "I'm here if you need me." With that, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Naruko alone once more with her thoughts, and the ever-present darkness inside her. She stood there for a long time, staring at the village below, her mind racing. Could she really handle this on her own? Could she control the darkness inside her, or was it only a matter of time before it consumed her entirely? Naruko shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. She had to be strong. She had to fight. That's what she had always done, fight, no matter the odds. But this was different. This wasn't an enemy she could punch or a battle she could win with brute force. This was something far more insidious, something that crept into her very soul. "I won't let you win," she whispered, her voice filled with a determination that she didn't fully feel. But Dark Kurama was always listening. "We'll see about that." As his voice faded into the background, Naruko turned her back on the village and walked away from the Hokage monument. Her footsteps were heavy, each step feeling like a battle in itself. She wasn't sure where she was going, only that she couldn't stay here, under the watchful eyes of the Hokage who had once stood where she did now. She needed to find a way to fight back, a way to control the darkness, before it was too late. But as the night deepened, and the shadows grew longer, Naruko couldn't shake the feeling that Dark Kurama was right. Time was running out. Chapter 2, The Cracks Beneath the Surface. The sun rose slowly over Konoha, casting a warm, golden glow over the village. For most of its residents, it signaled the beginning of another peaceful day, but for Naruko, it only reminded her of the darkness lurking inside. She hadn't slept at all that night. After her encounter with Kakashi, she wandered the outskirts of the village, hoping that the fresh air and quiet would help calm her thoughts. But it didn't. It never did. By the time she made her way back to the village, the streets were already buzzing with life. Vendors opened their shops, children ran through the streets, and shinobi prepared for the day's missions. Naruko walked through it all unnoticed, invisible to the world around her. Once, the villagers' attention had been inescapable, their whispers and suspicious glances following her wherever she went. But now, as a respected shinobi and protector of the village, they no longer saw her as a threat. If only they knew the truth. "Still trying to hide from them, aren't you?" Dark Kurama's voice slithered into her mind again, taunting her as always. "They think you've changed, but we both know better. You're still the same monster they feared." Naruko gritted her teeth, ignoring the voice as best she could. She couldn't let Dark Kurama get to her, not now. She had a mission today, and the last thing she needed was to lose control in front of her team. As she made her way to the Hokage Tower, she could already see Sakura, Sai, and Yamato waiting for her at the gates. Sakura waved, her pink hair catching the sunlight, but Naruko barely managed a weak smile in return. She knew Sakura would sense that something was wrong, she always did, but Naruko hoped she could keep the truth hidden for just a little longer. Naruko! Sakura called out as Naruko approached. You're late. Did you oversleep again? Naruko forced a laugh, trying to shake off the heavy feeling in her chest. Yeah, something like that. Sai gave her his usual polite smile, but his eyes lingered on her a little longer than usual. You seem distracted. Naruko shrugged, not trusting herself to speak. Yamato, standing a few paces behind them, studied her in silence, his sharp gaze taking in every detail. He had always been able to sense fluctuations in her chakra, and Naruko had no doubt he was picking up on the turbulence swirling inside her now. She felt exposed, vulnerable. We should get going, Yamato said finally, breaking the tension. The mission won't wait. Naruko let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding and nodded. She followed the group as they set off toward the northern gate, trying to focus on the task at hand. The mission was simple: investigate a small disturbance in a neighboring village. Normally, such a task wouldn't even require their entire team, but ever since the end of the war, tensions had been high, and the Hokage wasn't taking any chances. As they traveled through the forest, Naruko couldn't help but feel the familiar weight of dark Kurama pressing against her consciousness. He had been quieter for the past hour, but she knew better than to think he had given up. He was always there, lurking in the background, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. You're running out of time, you know, his voice whispered in her mind, sending chills down her spine. You can't keep pretending everything is fine. Soon, everyone will see what you really are. Naruko clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Shut up, she muttered under her breath, though she knew he wouldn't. Suddenly, Yamato stopped, holding up a hand to signal the others. We're close, he said, his voice low. Stay alert. Naruko's heart raced as they approached the village. She could feel something, an uneasy presence, a heaviness in the air that made her skin crawl. It wasn't just her imagination, something was definitely wrong here. The village was eerily quiet as they entered, the streets deserted. Houses stood with their doors open, windows broken, as if the people had fled in a hurry. Naruko's eyes scanned the area, her senses on high alert. Where is everyone? Sakura asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yamato frowned, his brow furrowed in concentration. There's no sign of a struggle, but something definitely happened here. Naruko's gut twisted. She could feel dark Kurama stirring inside her, his chakra prickling against her skin. He was reacting to something powerful. And then she saw it, a faint shimmer in the distance, just beyond the village. There, she pointed, her voice sharper than she intended. Something's out there. The team moved as one, following Naruko's lead as they approached the strange glow. As they got closer, the air seemed to thicken, the oppressive energy growing stronger with each step. Naruko's heart pounded in her chest, a sense of dread washing over her. And then they saw it. A figure stood in the clearing, cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Naruko felt her blood run cold as she realized what they were facing. It was a remnant of Kagaya's power, a creature born from the same energy that had once threatened to destroy their world. The creature turned its gaze toward them, and Naruko felt dark Kurama surge within her, his chakra flaring in response to the danger. Finally, dark Kurama growled, his voice filled with anticipation. A real challenge. Before Naruko could react, the creature lunged at them, faster than anything she had ever seen. Yamato and Sai moved to intercept, their weapons clashing against the creature's strange, ethereal form. But it was strong, stronger than any enemy they had faced in recent times. Naruko's hands trembled as she watched the battle unfold. Dark Kurama's chakra was pulsing inside her, growing stronger with each passing second. She could feel him clawing at the edges of her control, begging to be unleashed. Let me out, he snarled. You can't win this without me. Naruko shook her head, trying to suppress him, but the strain was becoming too much. Her vision blurred, her head spinning as she fought to keep him contained. She couldn't lose control, not now, not here. But the creature was relentless, and her teammates were struggling. Sai had been thrown back, his ink creatures dissolving against the creature's strange energy. Yamato's Wujutsu barely slowed it down, and Sakura's punches, though powerful, couldn't land a solid hit. Naruko's heart raced, her breathing shallow. She had to help them. She had to do something. Naruko, we need you. Sakura shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Naruko's eyes flickered, and for a moment, she hesitated. She could feel Dark Kurama's power surging inside her, his chakra begging to be released. If she let him out, she could end this fight in an instant. But at what cost? You can't save them without me, Dark Kurama whispered, his voice dripping with malice. They'll die if you don't act. Naruko's hands clenched into fists, her mind racing. She couldn't lose her friends. She couldn't let them suffer because of her weakness. But if she let Dark Kurama take over, would there be anything left of her to come back? Chapter 3, The Temptation of Power. Naruko's breath came in shallow gasps as she stood frozen, watching her teammates struggle against the overwhelming power of the Kagaya remnant. The battle raged on, but all she could hear was the steady, taunting voice of Dark Kurama whispering in her mind. His sinister laughter echoed, filling her with dread and the weight of her indecision. Why are you hesitating? Dark Kurama's voice dripped with malice. Look at them. They're falling one by one. You can't protect them. You're too weak. Her fingers twitched as the battle unfolded before her. Sai was the first to fall, his body crashing into the side of a broken building. His ink creatures dissolved into the air as the creature's energy overwhelmed them. Yamato's Wujutsu barely held the creature at bay, but it was clear that even he was reaching his limit. The creature's power was growing, feeding off the remnants of Kagaya's chakra in the air. Every strike from her friends was met with an unyielding force that sent shockwaves through the ground. Naruko could see the exhaustion on their faces, the strain in their movements. And yet, she stood there, paralyzed by her own internal war. Naruko. Sakura's voice cut through the chaos, filled with desperation. She had managed to avoid the creature's attacks for now, but even her strength was faltering. We need you. Naruko's heart clenched. She wanted to help. She needed to help. But every time she tried to focus her chakra, she felt Dark Kurama stir, pushing against her mental barriers, his sinister power tempting her with a way out. The weight of his dark energy filled her veins, burning with a terrifying promise of destruction. You know what you have to do, Dark Kurama purred. Let me out. Let me fight. I'll crush this pathetic creature in an instant. Naruko's mind raced. She knew he was right. She had felt his power before, the raw, untamed force that could obliterate anything in its path. If she let Dark Kurama out, she could end this fight. She could save her friends. But the cost was too high. Her vision blurred as the strain of holding him back took its toll on her body. Her muscles ached, her head throbbed, and the dark chakra swirled violently inside her, like a storm threatening to break free. She could feel the edges of her control slipping, her mental defenses cracking under the pressure. Let go, Dark Kurama whispered, his voice seductive. Like poison seeping into her thoughts. You're losing them. You're losing everything. But I can save them. Naruko squeezed her eyes shut, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't lose control. Not again. The last time she had let even a fraction of Dark Kurama's power slip through, the destruction had been catastrophic. Buildings leveled, innocents hurt. She had barely managed to pull herself back from the brink. But this was different. Her friends' lives were at stake. Yamato and Sai were barely holding on. Sakura was trying to rally them, but even she couldn't keep this up for long. Naruko could see the fatigue in her movements, the way her punches grew slower with each strike. The creature was relentless, feeding off their desperation. I can't. Naruko's voice was barely a whisper, filled with the weight of her guilt and fear. Her body trembled, caught between her duty to protect her friends and the terror of what would happen if she unleashed the darkness inside her. And then the creature roared. A pulse of energy erupted from its body, sending shockwaves through the air. Yamato's jutsu shattered like brittle branches, and he was thrown back, crashing hard into the ground. Sakura screamed as the force hit her, her body skidding across the dirt. Naruko's heart stopped for a moment as she watched them fall, her friends lying broken and battered. Time seemed to slow, the world around her fading into a blur. All she could hear was the deafening roar of the creature and the relentless pounding of her own heart. Her chest tightened, the overwhelming sense of helplessness crashing over her like a wave. "You're too late," Dark Kurama's voice whispered, soft and cruel. "They're going to die because you were too weak to act." Naruko's eyes widened in horror as she saw the creature turn its attention toward Sakura. Its glowing eyes locked onto her, and in that moment, Naruko knew what was about to happen. She had seen that look before, the cold, calculated gaze of a predator about to strike. "No." Naruko's voice broke as she screamed, her heart lurching in her chest. The creature lunged. Naruko's body moved before her mind could catch up, her chakra surging to life in a desperate attempt to reach Sakura. But she wasn't fast enough. The creature's energy crackled through the air, aimed directly at her fallen teammate. And then everything went silent. For a brief, agonizing moment, the world seemed to stop. Naruko could feel the pulse of chakra inside her, the dark, twisted energy of Dark Kurama pushing against the edges of her mind. It was stronger than ever now, a living force that demanded to be released. She could feel him, clawing at her, screaming for freedom. "Do it," Dark Kurama growled, his voice cutting through the silence. "You know you want to." Naruko's vision blurred as the heat of his chakra enveloped her. She couldn't let them die. She couldn't lose her friends. Not again. The thought of watching them fall, of being powerless to stop it, was too much to bear. Her fingers twitched, and in that moment, something inside her snapped. A surge of dark chakra exploded from her body, the force of it sending a shockwave through the clearing. The ground beneath her cracked, splitting apart as the energy coursed through her veins. Her once blue eyes flickered, turning a deep, menacing crimson as Dark Kurama's power took hold. The creature hesitated, its gaze shifting toward Naruko, sensing the shift in her energy. For the first time since the battle had begun, it paused, wary of the new threat before it. Naruko's chest heaved as she fought for control, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The power, it was intoxicating. She could feel it coursing through her, wild and uncontrollable, but it made her feel alive. For a brief, terrifying moment, she reveled in it, the sheer, overwhelming strength of Dark Kurama's chakra. "You see?" Dark Kurama's voice purred, smug and satisfied. "This is what you were meant to be. Embrace it. Let it consume you." Naruko's hands trembled as she struggled to rein him in, to keep herself from slipping further into the abyss. She couldn't let him take over. She had to control it. But as the dark energy pulsed through her, she wasn't sure if she could. The creature lunged again, but this time, Naruko was ready. Her movements were faster, more precise, fueled by the raw power coursing through her veins. She dodged its attack with ease, the dark chakra enhancing her reflexes, sharpening her senses. She could feel every detail of the battle, every shift in the air, every vibration of the ground beneath her feet. And then, without thinking, she struck. A blast of dark chakra erupted from her hands, slamming into the creature with devastating force. The impact sent it crashing into the ground, a massive crater forming beneath it. The creature let out a shrill, inhuman scream as it writhed in pain, its body flickering with unstable energy. Naruko stood over it, her chest heaving, her hands trembling with the remnants of Dark Kurama's power. The battle was over, but the war inside her had only just begun. The creature lay still, its glowing eyes fading as the last of Kagaya's energy dissipated into the air. Naruko's breath was ragged, her body trembling from the aftermath of the fight. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. She had used Dark Kurama's power. She had given in. Naruko's knees buckled, and she collapsed to the ground, her hands gripping the dirt as waves of guilt and fear washed over her. She could still feel the dark chakra lingering inside her, coiled like a snake, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. "You did well," Dark Kurama's voice was soft, almost soothing. "But this is only the beginning." Naruko's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at her hands, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like a crushing force. She had saved her friends, but at what cost? Part 4. Naruko sat on the ground, her breathing heavy and her heart pounding in her chest. The battle had ended, but the chaos inside her had just begun. She could still feel the lingering effects of Dark Kurama's power pulsing through her veins. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, but worst of all, it had felt right. That single, terrible realization made her stomach twist. She had given in to the darkness, and a part of her had liked it. Her hands trembled as she looked at them, still feeling the residual heat of the dark chakra. How could she face her friends now? How could she explain what had just happened? The answer, she realized with a sinking heart, was that she couldn't. They had seen everything. They knew. There was no hiding it anymore. "Naruko." Sakura's voice pierced the silence, filled with concern. Naruko didn't dare look up. She didn't want to see the fear or the judgment in her eyes. She didn't want to see the way her friends would look at her now, knowing what she had inside of her. Sakura knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on Naruko's shoulder. "Are you okay? You used his power, didn't you?" Her voice was soft, but Naruko could hear the tremor of fear beneath the surface. Naruko swallowed hard, her throat dry. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I couldn't stop it." Yamato approached, his eyes sharp and calculating as always. He had seen her struggle with Kurama before, but this was different. Dark Kurama's presence had been stronger, more malevolent, and it had nearly consumed her. "We need to talk about this," he said, his tone neutral, but firm. "That power, it's dangerous, Naruko. We've all seen what it can do." Naruko clenched her fists, guilt and frustration twisting inside her like a knot. She knew they were right. Dark Kurama was dangerous. She was dangerous. But what choice had she had? If she hadn't used his power, her friends would have been killed. Wasn't that worth the risk? "I didn't want to." Naruko's voice cracked, louder than she intended. She looked up at them, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and anger. "You don't understand. I didn't have a choice. If I hadn't used his power, that thing would have killed all of you." Sakura's expression softened, but the worry never left her eyes. "We're not blaming you, Naruko. We know you did what you had to. But this is getting worse. Isn't it? He's getting stronger." Naruko bit her lip, her gaze dropping to the ground once more. She hated how weak she felt, how out of control everything had become. Dark Kurama's voice echoed in her mind, quiet now, but always present, always watching. She could feel him lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the next chance to take control. Yamato crossed his arms, his face unreadable. "We need to find a way to deal with this before it gets out of hand. The last thing we want is for you to lose control completely." Naruko flinched at the thought. The idea of Dark Kurama taking over completely, of losing herself to that darkness, was terrifying. But what could she do? She had tried for so long to keep him contained, to suppress the dark side of the Nine Tails, but it was getting harder with each passing day. Every time she fought, every time she used her chakra, she could feel him pushing against the barriers she had built around him. "I don't know how much longer I can keep him in check," Naruko admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's like, he's always there, waiting for me to slip up." Sai, who had been silent until now, stepped forward, his face as calm and expressionless as ever. "Then maybe it's time we find a more permanent solution," Naruko looked at him, confused. What do you mean? There must be a way to weaken him, to stop him from taking over completely, Sai explained. We just need to figure out what that is. Naruko shook her head. I've tried everything. Seals, training, meditation, nothing works. He's too strong. Sakura exchanged a glance with Yamato, and Naruko could see the concern in their eyes. They were worried about her. And that only made her feel worse. She didn't want to be a burden to them. She didn't want to be the problem they had to fix. But what choice did she have? Dark Kurama was part of her, and she couldn't escape that. We'll figure it out together, Sakura said softly, offering a small, reassuring smile. You're not alone in this, Naruko. Naruko wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that there was a way out of this, that she could defeat Dark Kurama and regain control of her life. But deep down, she wasn't sure if that was possible. The darkness inside her was growing, and no matter how hard she fought, it felt like she was losing ground. I don't want to hurt anyone, Naruko whispered, her voice trembling. I'm scared that one day, I won't be able to stop him. Yamato placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression serious. We won't let that happen. But you need to trust us. You need to trust yourself. Naruko closed her eyes, taking a deep, shaky breath. Trust. It was such a simple word, but in this moment, it felt like the hardest thing in the world. Trust herself? How could she, when she wasn't even sure who she was anymore? How could she trust herself when the thing inside her was so much stronger than she could ever be? As they made their way back to the village, the weight of the day's events hung heavy over them. Naruko walked in silence, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened. The creature they had fought had been terrifying, but it was nothing compared to the fear she felt about the battle inside her own mind. Dark Kurama was waiting, always waiting, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep him at bay. The sun had begun to set by the time they reached the village, casting long shadows across the streets. The familiar sights and sounds of Konoha offered little comfort to Naruko now. Everything felt different, distant. She felt like a stranger in her own home, like she didn't belong here anymore. As they entered the gates, Naruko hesitated, her steps faltering. She couldn't face the village right now. She couldn't face the people who looked up to her, who believed in her. How could she stand before them, knowing that she was barely holding herself together? I need some time, Naruko said quietly, turning away from her team. I need to be alone for a while. Sakura started to protest, but Yamato stopped her with a hand on her arm. Let her go, he said softly. She needs space. Naruko didn't wait for a response. She walked away from them, her footsteps heavy as she made her way toward the outskirts of the village. The forest would give her the solitude she needed, a place where she could think without the weight of others' expectations pressing down on her. As she walked, the familiar voice of Dark Kurama whispered in her mind, soft but ever present. You can't hide from me, Naruko. She ignored him, quickening her pace. You'll see. In the end, I'm all you have. Naruko clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she forced herself to keep walking. She couldn't let him win. Not now. Not ever. But as the darkness of the forest enveloped her, she couldn't shake the feeling that Dark Kurama was right. No matter how far she ran, no matter how hard she fought, the darkness was always there. Waiting. Part 5. Naruko wandered deeper into the forest, the sounds of Konoha fading into silence behind her. The towering trees loomed above, their branches forming a thick canopy that blocked out the last rays of sunlight. As darkness fell, a chill crept into the air, matching the unease curling in her gut. She needed to be alone, away from the weight of expectations and the worried gazes of her friends. But as she moved deeper into the shadows, she felt the familiar, sinister presence of Dark Kurama lurking just beneath the surface. You think you can escape me by running away? He taunted, his voice smooth and mocking. You're only delaying the inevitable. Naruko clenched her fists, her heart racing. She wanted to scream, to lash out, but that would only give him what he wanted. Instead, she forced herself to breathe, to focus on the sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of nocturnal creatures, the faint breeze that carried the scent of damp earth. She had to calm down. She had to regain control. Taking a seat on a fallen log, Naruko closed her eyes, trying to center herself. She envisioned her chakra as a flowing river, powerful yet calm, steady, and controlled. She had practiced this countless times, but today felt different. The darkness inside her felt more alive, more eager to break free. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. "You know you can't keep this up forever," Dark Kurama whispered, his tone seductive. "I'm a part of you. You're wasting your strength trying to suppress me. Embrace me, and you'll be invincible." "No!" Naruko shouted, her voice echoing in the stillness of the forest. She pressed her palms against her ears, trying to drown him out. "I won't let you control me." "You're a fool, Naruko," he replied, his voice low and dangerous. "Every time you fight me, you only grow weaker. But every time you let me in, you become stronger. Think about it, how many times have you felt the thrill of power when you let me out? We could be unstoppable together." She shook her head violently, forcing herself to think of her friends, the bonds she had forged, the promises she had made. She could not become a monster. She could not lose herself to the darkness. But deep inside, a part of her wondered if he was right. How much longer could she keep this up? Each battle felt like it drained a little more of her will, a little more of her essence. Suddenly, a rustling sound pulled her from her thoughts. Naruko opened her eyes, scanning the darkness around her. The shadows seemed to shift, moving as if something was watching her. Her heart raced, the remnants of her earlier adrenaline still coursing through her. "Naruko," a soft voice called out, breaking through the stillness. Relief washed over her as she recognized the voice. It was Sakura, her pink-haired friend, who had followed her into the forest. "I thought I lost you. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Naruko lied, forcing a smile onto her face even as the turmoil inside her churned. "I just needed some space." Sakura stepped closer, her expression filled with concern. "You shouldn't be out here alone. It's not safe, especially after what happened earlier." The truth of her words hit Naruko hard. She had just fought a powerful creature born from Kagaya's remnants, and now she was alone, exposed to whatever dangers lurked in the shadows. "I just needed to think," Naruko said softly, her voice shaking slightly. "Thinking is good," Sakura replied gently, "but not if it means shutting everyone out. We're here for you, Naruko. You don't have to bear this alone." The sincerity in Sakura's voice pierced through the dark fog enveloping Naruko's heart. She could feel tears welling up in her eyes as the weight of her fear and guilt threatened to spill over. "What if I hurt you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if I lose control again?" "I can't, I won't let that happen." Sakura knelt beside her, reaching out to grasp her hands. "You're not a monster, Naruko. You fought too hard to protect those you love. Yes, there's darkness inside you, but there's also light. You have the strength to control it. You just need to believe in yourself." Naruko looked down at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of Sakura's grip. "But what if I don't want to be a part of it?" she confessed, the words escaping her lips before she could hold them back. "What if I'm just a vessel for his power, nothing more?" Sakura's gaze softened, her voice steady. "You are so much more than just a vessel. You're a hero, Naruko. You've overcome so much already. You've saved this village, your friends, and the world. Don't you see? You have the power to shape your own destiny." Naruko took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of Sakura's words begin to mend the cracks in her spirit. "But it's so hard. Dark Kurama is always there, whispering in my ear, tempting me with power. I can't let that happen." "Then fight back," Sakura urged, her voice fierce. "Every time he tries to take control, remind yourself of who you are. You're Naruko Uzumaki, the daughter of the Nine Tails. You are a ninja, a protector, and a friend. Don't let his voice drown out everything you've fought for." Naruko felt a spark ignite within her, a flicker of determination that pushed against the shadows closing in. "You're right," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I can't let him win. I won't." With a newfound resolve, she stood, her grip on Sakura's hand tightening as she took a step forward. "I'll fight this. I'll find a way to control the darkness." Sakura beamed at her, pride shining in her eyes. "That's the spirit. We'll figure this out together, I promise." As they stood there in the heart of the forest, Naruko felt a sense of hope begin to bloom. She wasn't alone in this fight. She had her friends by her side, ready to support her no matter how difficult the path ahead might be. But as she looked deeper into the forest, the shadow still loomed, and dark Kurama's voice lingered in the back of her mind, a reminder of the battle that raged within. "You can't escape me forever, Naruko. I'll always be here, waiting." With a deep breath, Naruko pushed the thought aside. She would not let fear dictate her life. She was more than just the darkness inside her. She was a warrior, a protector, and she would find a way to reclaim her strength. Together with Sakura, she would face whatever came next, both in the world outside and the turmoil within. As they began to walk back toward the village, a sense of purpose filled Naruko's heart. She would learn to harness her power, to control it instead of letting it control her. With her friends by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But as they stepped back into the fading light of the day, Naruko couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Part 6. As Naruko and Sakura made their way back to the village, the path grew familiar again, the sounds of Konoha gently washing over them like a comforting wave. The laughter of children echoed in the distance, and the warm glow of lanterns began to light the streets. But even in this comforting atmosphere, Naruko couldn't shake the lingering shadows that clung to her mind. "What do you think will happen next?" Sakura asked, breaking the silence between them. She glanced at Naruko, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "I mean, what are we going to do about Dark Kurama?" Naruko took a deep breath, considering the question carefully. "I have to find a way to control him. To learn how to use his power without letting him take over. But I don't know how," she admitted, her voice laced with uncertainty. Sakura nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "We can start by researching sealing techniques. There might be something in the archives that can help us strengthen your seals or even give you insight into how to manage his influence." Naruko felt a surge of hope at Sakura's suggestion. "You think there's a way to weaken him? To keep him from tempting me?" "Anything is possible," Sakura replied, her eyes shining with conviction. "You've faced impossible odds before, Naruko. If anyone can find a way through this, it's you." As they entered the village, the familiar sights wrapped around Naruko like a warm blanket. The villagers greeted them with smiles, unaware of the internal struggles she faced. She waved back, forcing a smile, but the weight of her secret felt heavier than ever. The two friends made their way to the Hokage Tower, where the archives were located. As they entered, the musty smell of old scrolls and ancient texts filled the air. Shelves stretched high, packed with knowledge from generations of shinobi. The sight alone made Naruko's heart race, the thrill of discovery stirring inside her. "Let's split up," Sakura suggested, heading toward a section dedicated to seals and forbidden jutsu. "I'll look for anything related to the Nine Tails or Dark Chakra. You focus on finding ways to strengthen your seals, okay?" Naruko nodded, feeling a sense of purpose wash over her. "Got it. I'll meet you back here in an hour." As she moved deeper into the archives, her fingers brushed over the spines of old texts, searching for anything that might hold the key to her control over Dark Kurama. Each scroll she examined seemed to resonate with the whispers in her mind, reminding her of the battle she was fighting within herself. She pulled a thick scroll from the shelf, the title faded and worn. As she unfurled it, the ancient symbols danced before her eyes, each one a reminder of the power contained within the Nine Tails. The words spoke of harnessing chakra, of binding and sealing, but they also hinted at the dangers of letting darkness take root. Suddenly, a sharp pain flared in her chest, and she stumbled back, dropping the scroll as Dark Kurama's voice flooded her mind. You think you can escape me by reading old texts? Those foolish seals can't contain me. You're wasting your time, Naruko. Embrace me, and together we can achieve true power. Naruko squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head furiously. No. I won't let you control me. I'm not like you. Dark Kurama's laughter echoed through her mind, cold and mocking. But you're so close to giving in, aren't you? You felt it earlier, the thrill of unleashing my power. You enjoyed it. Deep down, you crave it. No. I crave strength to protect my friends, not destruction. Naruko shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet archives. She took a deep breath, grounding herself. I can do this. I will find a way to keep you at bay. But the doubt lingered, creeping back into her thoughts. What if she couldn't control him? What if he was right, and she truly was a monster? As she refocused on the scroll before her, a series of familiar symbols caught her attention. Her heart raced as she recognized them. These were seals used to contain and suppress powerful chakra. They could help her reinforce her own seals, maybe even strengthen her resolve against Dark Kurama. With renewed determination, she began to jot down notes, her fingers flying over the parchment as she copied the seals and their meanings. The words blurred together as her thoughts spiraled, and she struggled to separate her focus from the dark whispers of Kurama that echoed in her mind. Moments later, she felt a presence behind her and turned to find Sakura standing there, her arms filled with scrolls. I found some interesting things, Sakura said, her face brightening at the sight of Naruko's work. But you look a little tense. Are you okay? Naruko forced a smile, though she felt the tension in her shoulders. Yeah, I'm fine. Just finding some useful seals. What about you? Sakura laid her scrolls on the table, her eyes lighting up with excitement. I found references to a powerful sealing technique that could help contain Dark Kurama's influence. It requires a lot of chakra, but if we can strengthen your seals, it might work. Naruko's heart soared at the news. That's amazing. Can you show me? As they pored over the scrolls together, Naruko felt the shadows begin to recede, the flicker of hope reigniting inside her. They spent the next hour analyzing the techniques, scribbling notes, and discussing ways to reinforce Naruko's chakra control. But as they worked, a familiar unease returned, and Naruko felt the weight of Dark Kurama's presence pressing against her mind. You think this will help? He sneered. You're just delaying the inevitable. Sooner or later, you will give in to the power I offer. Naruko pushed the voice aside, focusing on Sakura's words. If we can create a strong enough seal, I'll be able to fight back against you, she said firmly. Fight back? How adorable, Dark Kurama replied mockingly. You're merely playing with fire. One slip, and you'll lose everything. Naruko clenched her fists, a spark of anger flaring within her. I won't lose. Not now, not ever. Sakura glanced at her, concern etched across her face. Naruko, are you sure you're all right? I'm fine. Naruko snapped, then quickly softened her tone. I'm sorry, Sakura. It's hard. Dark Kurama keeps trying to break through. But I won't let him win. Sakura nodded, a resolute expression crossing her face. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone, remember? As they continued their research, Naruko's heart swelled with gratitude. She knew she could rely on Sakura, but the battle within her was far from over. The thought of facing Dark Kurama again filled her with dread, yet it also ignited a determination that pushed her forward. Hours passed as they delved deeper into the scrolls, piecing together a plan. Just as they began to feel a sense of accomplishment, a loud commotion erupted outside the tower, breaking their concentration. What was that? Naruko asked, her instincts kicking in. She exchanged a worried glance with Sakura. Let's check it out, Sakura said, already moving toward the door. They rushed outside, and the scene that greeted them was chaotic. Villagers ran in every direction, their faces twisted in fear. In the distance, a cloud of smoke rose from the edge of the village, dark and ominous. "What's happening?" Naruko shouted to a passing villager. "A rogue shinobi. They're attacking," the villager gasped, rushing past them. Panic surged through Naruko. "We have to help," she said, her heart racing. Sakura nodded, determination flooding her eyes. "Let's go." As they dashed toward the chaos, Naruko felt a flicker of fear mixed with excitement. This was her chance to prove herself. She could fight back against whatever was attacking her village. But as the smoke thickened and the sounds of battle echoed in the air, a familiar voice whispered in her mind. "Let me out, Naruko. Together, we'll crush them all." "No," she snapped internally. "I can handle this on my own." But as they approached the source of the chaos, the weight of her uncertainty hung heavily in the air. She had to focus. She had to control the darkness, not let it consume her. Naruko and Sakura rushed toward the fray, ready to face whatever danger awaited them, determined to protect their home and the bonds they held dear. As they stepped into the chaos, Naruko felt the darkness within her swirl, the battle for control raging once more. This time, she would fight back, not just against the enemies outside, but against the shadows within. Part 7. As Naruko and Sakura raced through the chaos of the village, the air crackled with tension and fear. Shouts echoed around them, punctuated by the sounds of clashing weapons and the cries of panicked villagers. Naruko's heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the moment she had been waiting for, a chance to prove herself, to show that she could protect her home. But with the stakes so high, the whispers of dark Kurama loomed in the back of her mind. The streets were filled with chaos. Villagers rushed past, desperately trying to escape the destruction. A group of shinobi from the village was engaged in a fierce battle with the rogue attacker, who moved with a speed and ferocity that sent shivers down Naruko's spine. She could see the flicker of chakra flaring around the rogue, a dark and twisted energy that matched the chaos of the situation. "Stay close," Sakura shouted, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. "We need to find out what we're dealing with." As they approached the center of the turmoil, Naruko caught sight of the rogue shinobi. He was tall and imposing, his movements fluid and dangerous. Dark chakra pulsed around him like a storm, and Naruko's stomach twisted at the sight. This wasn't just any rogue, this was someone who had clearly embraced their darkness. The rogue's laughter rang out, cold and mocking, as he sent a blast of dark energy toward a group of shinobi who were trying to contain him. The attack sent them sprawling, and Naruko felt her heart drop at the sight. They were struggling. They needed help. "Let's go," she shouted, adrenaline fueling her as she prepared to charge into battle. But as she stepped forward, the familiar voice of dark Kurama whispered in her mind, a reminder of the power that lay within her. "Use me, Naruko. Let me take control. Together, we can destroy him in an instant." "No," Naruko growled, shaking her head. "I can't let you take over. I won't become a monster." The rogue shinobi turned his gaze toward her, eyes gleaming with malice. "Ah, the daughter of the Nine Tails. You think you can stand against me? You're nothing without your precious little friends." Naruko felt the anger rise within her, a heat that ignited her resolve. "I'm not afraid of you." With a burst of chakra, she leaped into the fray, moving with the fluid grace she had honed through years of training. She dodged a swing from the rogue's weapon, countering with a swift kick that connected with his side. The impact sent him staggering back, but he quickly regained his footing, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "Feisty, aren't you?" he taunted, drawing on more dark chakra. "But you're just a child playing with fire. You don't know what you're getting into." Naruko's determination flared. "I may be young, but I'm strong. I won't let you hurt anyone else." Sakura joined her side, launching her own attack, sending a flurry of punches and kicks aimed at the rogue. Together, they worked in perfect sync, a rhythm that had been forged through years of friendship and training. But as they fought, the rogue seemed to absorb their attacks, his dark energy growing stronger with every hit. "Is that all you've got?" he sneered, the dark chakra swirling around him, growing more volatile. You'll have to do better than that. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a wave of dark energy that exploded toward them, forcing Naruko and Sakura to leap out of the way. The blast struck a nearby building, sending debris flying in every direction. Naruko shielded her face from the dust and chaos, her heart racing. Get back, she shouted, glancing at Sakura. We need to regroup. Sakura nodded, determination etched on her face. We can't let him get away with this. We need to find a way to contain him. As they maneuvered through the wreckage, Naruko felt the familiar stir of dark Kurama within her. Let me out, he urged, his voice a seductive whisper. You can't win this without me. Embrace the power I offer. Naruko gritted her teeth, fighting to suppress the urge to give in. I won't. I can do this on my own. But as the battle raged on, she could feel her energy waning. The rogue was relentless, and every strike she landed seemed to bounce off him, the dark chakra absorbing their attacks and fueling his strength. Pathetic, he taunted again, advancing toward them with a wicked grin. You think you can defeat me? You'll regret standing against me. In that moment, Naruko felt a surge of panic. Her friends were counting on her, and she couldn't let them down. She couldn't let this monster hurt anyone else. But what could she do? Just as despair began to creep in, an idea sparked in her mind. The seals. She had been studying them earlier. If she could somehow use them to contain the rogue's dark energy, they might stand a chance. Naruko! Sakura shouted, drawing her attention back to the battle. We need to work together. If we combine our chakra, we might be able to create a stronger attack. Naruko nodded, her determination reigniting. You're right. Let's do this. They quickly formed a plan, channeling their chakra together, a wave of energy building between them. As the rogue lunged at them, Naruko focused, recalling the sealing techniques she had studied. With Sakura beside her, she visualized the seals forming a barrier, a binding force that would contain the rogue's power. Now! Naruko shouted, releasing their combined energy. The wave of chakra surged forward, forming into a binding seal that wrapped around the rogue shinobi. For a brief moment, he seemed taken aback, his expression shifting from arrogance to shock as the seal clamped down around him. What? No. This can't be, he roared, struggling against the energy that bound him. Yes. We can do this. Sakura cheered, her excitement filling the air. Keep pushing. With a final surge of effort, they drove the seal deeper, forcing the rogue to the ground. Dark energy crackled around him, but it began to dissipate, contained within the binding seal. Naruko felt a sense of triumph wash over her as she saw the look of defeat in his eyes. This isn't over, the rogue growled, but his voice lacked the confidence it had held moments before. Naruko and Sakura exchanged a triumphant glance, their bond strengthening in that moment. They had done it. They had managed to contain the rogue shinobi, turning the tide of the battle. But as the dust began to settle and the villagers cautiously emerged from their hiding places, Naruko couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Dark Kurama's voice lingered in the back of her mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that still lay within her. Remember, I'm still here, he whispered, a chilling reminder of the struggle ahead. You can't escape me forever. Naruko clenched her fists, determination flooding her heart once more. She had faced the darkness today, and she would continue to face it in the days to come. With her friends by her side, she would learn to control the shadows within her and protect those she loved. As the villagers gathered around, cheering and expressing their gratitude, Naruko felt a sense of belonging wash over her. This was her home, and she would do whatever it took to protect it. With the battle behind them, she could see the light ahead, and for the first time in a long while, she felt hope begin to blossom within her heart. Part 8. As the cheers of the villagers echoed around her, Naruko felt a rush of relief wash over her. The battle had ended, and they had triumphed. But beneath that relief lay a current of unease. Dark Kurama's whispers were still present, a reminder of the darker battle she fought within herself. The rogue shinobi was secured in a binding seal, his dark chakra contained. Naruko and Sakura stood side by side, the adrenaline from the fight slowly ebbing away. As villagers began to approach, their faces filled with gratitude and admiration, Naruko couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and dread. "Thank you. You saved us," a villager exclaimed, tears of relief streaming down her face. "You fought bravely." "Yeah, you two were incredible," another added, clapping them both on the back. Sakura smiled, basking in the praise, but Naruko felt a knot in her stomach. What if they knew the truth? What if they knew that a part of her was still wrestling with a darkness that threatened to consume her? "Thanks, everyone," Naruko replied, forcing a smile. "But we still need to make sure the rogue doesn't escape. We have to take him to the Hokage." As the villagers began to disperse, their gratitude lingering in the air, Naruko felt a heavy weight settle on her shoulders. She could see Yamato approaching, his expression serious as he surveyed the situation. "Good work, both of you," he said, nodding at Naruko and Sakura. "But we need to keep an eye on him. This kind of darkness can have lasting effects, and we don't know what other allies he might have." "Right," Naruko replied, her mind racing. "We should inform the Hokage right away. There might be more rogues like him out there." Sakura glanced at Naruko, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "You seem a bit off." "I'm fine," Naruko insisted, though she could feel the truth wavering beneath the surface. I need to get this done." Yamato turned, leading them toward the Hokage Tower. The streets felt different now, the atmosphere charged with the aftermath of battle. Naruko could see villagers helping one another, checking on their neighbors, their faces painted with relief. It was a reminder of why she fought, of the bonds they shared, and the home they had built together. As they approached the Hokage Tower, Naruko felt her heart begin to race again. She would have to face Tsunade and explain what had happened. She would have to confront the reality of Dark Kurama's influence and what it meant for her future. Entering the tower, they were greeted by Shizune, who looked up from her papers with a start. "Naruko. Sakura. I heard about the attack. Are you both alright?" Her voice was filled with concern. "We're fine," Sakura assured her, but Naruko could see the worry in Shizune's eyes. "But we need to speak with Tsunade right away. It's important." Shizune nodded, leading them down the hall. As they approached the office, Naruko felt her palms grow sweaty. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. She had to be strong, had to show that she could handle this. Tsunade looked up from her desk as they entered, her expression shifting from serious to relieved as she recognized them. "Naruko. Sakura. I'm glad you're safe. I heard about the attack." "We took care of it," Naruko said, her voice steady, despite the storm brewing inside her. "But there's more to discuss. The rogue shinobi, he was powerful, fueled by dark chakra. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Tsunade's brow furrowed as she listened. "What did you learn? Was he working alone?" "Not exactly," Sakura chimed in. "He mentioned something about darkness and how he fed off our attacks. It's as if he was drawing power from the chaos around him." Naruko felt the pressure in the room shift as Tsunade's expression grew serious. "This could be a sign of a larger problem," she said, leaning back in her chair, deep in thought. "If there are more rogue shinobi like him, we'll need to prepare. And if they're using dark chakra, we could be facing something far more dangerous than we realize." Naruko felt a chill run down her spine. "What if they're after me? After Kurama?" Tsunade studied her for a moment, her gaze piercing. "It's a possibility. They may want to exploit the Ninetales' power. We have to be vigilant." As the weight of those words sank in, Naruko felt the shadows creeping back into her mind. Dark Kurama's voice whispered again, insidious and alluring. "They need you, Naruko. They'll never understand the power you hold. Only I can help you become the weapon you were meant to be." "No." Naruko shot back, her voice rising in defiance. "I won't let you take control. I won't become a monster. Tsunade's gaze flickered to Naruko, concern etched across her face. Naruko, are you alright? Sakura stepped closer, her eyes filled with worry. You don't have to fight this alone. We're here for you. Naruko took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. I'm fine, she insisted, but the words felt hollow even to her. She was tired of fighting, of pretending that everything was okay. The battle inside her raged on, and every moment felt like a ticking clock. Let's focus on the rogue, Tsunade said, her voice firm, pulling Naruko from her thoughts. We need to ensure he doesn't have any allies. I want you two to lead a team to investigate any reports of unusual chakra signatures in the area. If there are others, we need to find them before they strike again. Understood, Naruko replied, the sense of purpose flooding her once more. This was what she was meant to do, to protect her home, her friends, and herself. As they discussed the details of the mission, Naruko pushed her inner turmoil aside, determined to focus on the task at hand. She had to be strong. For herself, for her friends, and for the village. But even as she resolved to keep pushing forward, she could feel Dark Kurama's presence lingering, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As they prepared to leave the Hokage Tower, a sense of dread settled in the pit of her stomach. The battle against the rogue was over, but the fight within her was far from finished. She could feel it in the air, a dark undercurrent that threatened to pull her under. As they stepped outside, the village bathed in the soft glow of twilight, Naruko took a deep breath. She would face whatever came next. She would learn to control the darkness within her, to stand strong against the shadows that threatened to consume her. With her friends by her side, she would find a way to harness the power of the Nine Tails without letting it take control. She was determined to fight for her friends, her village, and the light that still flickered within her heart. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, and Naruko vowed she would not let fear dictate her life any longer. But as they prepared to leave the tower, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if the real enemy was not just outside, but also within? With resolve and a hint of fear, Naruko set out to confront the battles that lay ahead, both in the world around her and in the shadows of her own heart. Part 9. As Naruko and Sakura left the Hokage Tower, a palpable tension hung in the air. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the village streets. Villagers were slowly returning to their homes, whispering about the battle and the rogue shinobi, but Naruko felt a weight on her shoulders that had nothing to do with the aftermath of the fight. Are you ready for this? Sakura asked, glancing at Naruko as they headed toward the training grounds where their team would gather. Naruko nodded, though the knot in her stomach tightened. I have to be. There's no other choice. As they approached the designated meeting point, Naruko could see their teammates gathering. Yamato was already there, discussing strategy with a few other shinobi. Sai leaned against a nearby tree, his usual calm demeanor unshaken by the chaos of the day. But the weight of uncertainty loomed over them all. Hey, you two, Yamato greeted them, his voice steady. Are you ready to brief the team on the situation? Yeah, Naruko replied, her heart racing. We need to explain what happened with the rogue and the dark chakra he was using. We have to be prepared for anything. As the rest of the team gathered, Naruko felt her anxiety bubble beneath the surface. She had fought bravely, but the aftermath of the battle was starting to settle in. The rogue shinobi had tapped into a darkness that sent chills down her spine. The fear that Dark Kurama could gain a foothold in her mind again lingered, like a shadow always waiting to emerge. Alright, everyone, Naruko began, trying to project confidence. Earlier today, we faced a rogue shinobi fueled by dark chakra. He seemed to draw strength from chaos, and it took everything we had to contain him. We need to be on high alert, because he mentioned that there might be others like him. Yamato nodded, encouraging Naruko with his presence. We need to investigate any unusual chakra signatures in the area and determine whether there are other rogue shinobi in the vicinity. This isn't just about one enemy, we could be facing a larger threat. What do we do if we encounter another rogue? One of the shinobi asked, concern in his voice. We need to stay together and rely on our training, Sakura chimed in. Communication will be key. If we work as a team, we can take them down before they have a chance to unleash their power. Naruko felt a surge of gratitude for her friends. They were right, together, they were stronger. But in the back of her mind, dark Kurama's voice lingered, whispering doubts that threatened to unravel her resolve. As they discussed their strategy, Naruko focused on the task at hand, trying to push the darkness aside. She needed to be present, to fight for her friends and her village. But the tension between her and dark Kurama simmered just below the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. Let's move out, Yamato said, breaking her thoughts. Stay vigilant and keep your senses sharp. We'll start our search in the forest where the rogue appeared. As they set off, Naruko felt the familiar pulse of chakra around her, a blend of her own and the energy of her teammates. Each step felt heavy, as if the shadows were creeping closer, trying to pull her back into darkness. She couldn't afford to let that happen. The team made their way through the forest, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. Naruko's senses were heightened, every rustle of leaves making her heart race. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Stay alert, Yamato instructed, his eyes scanning the trees. We're entering unfamiliar territory. Suddenly, the tranquility of the forest shattered. A dark figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette against the fading light. The rogue shinobi stood before them, his presence menacing as he grinned, revealing a sharp smile filled with malice. Well, he drawled, his voice oozing with arrogance. Look who it is. The little heroes of Konoha, come to play. Naruko's heart raced as she recognized him. This was no ordinary rogue, he was the same one they had fought earlier. You're back, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady, despite the fear that clawed at her insides. Of course, he chuckled, stepping closer, dark chakra swirling around him like a tempest. You think I would let such a delightful opportunity slip away? I've only just begun. Step away, Yamato commanded, positioning himself protectively in front of Naruko and Sakura. You're outnumbered, and we won't let you harm anyone else. Oh, but I'm not alone, the rogue sneered, raising his hand. You see, darkness has a way of calling to others. I've gathered a few friends who are more than eager to play. Before Naruko could react, several more dark figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding them. Her heart sank as she recognized the telltale signs of dark chakra swirling around them. Get ready! Yamato shouted, signaling for them to prepare for battle. Focus, Naruko. Sakura urged, her voice filled with determination. We can do this. Naruko took a deep breath, trying to center herself despite the overwhelming sense of dread that filled the air. She felt the familiar stir of dark Kurama within her, urging her to unleash his power. You could take them all down in an instant, he whispered, a dark temptation lingering in her thoughts. But she shook her head, fighting against the urge to give in. No, I can do this without you. As the rogue and his allies lunged forward, Naruko felt her instincts kick in. She had to fight, had to protect her friends. Let's go, she shouted, launching herself into the fray alongside Sakura. The battle erupted around them, chaos swirling as they fought against the overwhelming tide of darkness. Naruko's fists connected with one of the rogue shinobi, sending him crashing into a tree. But as she moved, she could feel the presence of dark Kurama lurking in the back of her mind, waiting for the perfect moment to take control. Fight me, Naruko, he taunted. Embrace your power. Let me help you. But as she dodged another attack, Naruko pushed the thoughts aside. She was stronger than the darkness. She could control it. With a surge of chakra, she unleashed a powerful jutsu, binding one of the rogue shinobi in a burst of energy. The satisfaction of her victory ignited her resolve, but the shadows still loomed, threatening to pull her back down. Keep pushing. Sakura shouted, rallying her teammates as they fought back against the waves of dark figures. We can't give in. As the battle raged on, Naruko felt the heat of her chakra rise, battling against the dark energy that surrounded them. She could feel the darkness whispering in her ear, tempting her to unleash her full potential, to let Dark Kurama take control. But she couldn't. Not like this. The tide of the battle began to turn, and the rogue shinobi staggered back, surprise flickering in his eyes. How is this possible? He spat, rage coloring his voice. You're just children. You can't hope to defeat me. We're not just children. Naruko shouted back, her heart pounding with adrenaline. We're ninjas, and we fight for our village. With renewed determination, Naruko launched herself forward, aiming to land the finishing blow on the rogue. But just as she moved, a surge of dark energy erupted from him, and everything went black. Naruko stumbled, disoriented, the world around her fading into darkness. Panic clawed at her throat as she realized she was alone, surrounded by the shadows of her own mind. Welcome back, Naruko, Dark Kurama's voice echoed around her, dark and seductive. You've come to embrace your true power, haven't you? No. Naruko shouted, shaking her head as she fought to push back the encroaching darkness. I won't let you take control. Pathetic, he sneered, his voice reverberating through the void. You're fighting a losing battle. Embrace me, and you will be unstoppable. Together, we can crush anyone who stands in our way. The shadows swirled around her, closing in as the voice grew louder, more insistent. Naruko felt the weight of his darkness pressing down on her, threatening to consume her whole. But deep inside, a flicker of light remained, a reminder of who she was and what she fought for. I'm not afraid of you, she whispered, clenching her fists. I am Naruko Uzumaki. I will not let you win. With a surge of determination, she pushed against the darkness, focusing on the bonds she had forged with her friends, the love and support that filled her heart. In that moment, she felt the shadows recede, the darkness around her beginning to shatter. I will fight for my village, she declared, her voice strong and unwavering. I will fight for my friends. With a final burst of energy, she broke free from the void, reeling back into the chaos of the battle. The rogue shinobi loomed before her, surprise etched on his face as he faltered. Naruko felt the weight of her chakra return, and she pushed herself forward, tapping into the strength that had always been within her. She would not succumb to the darkness. Now it's my turn, she shouted, unleashing a powerful jutsu that erupted from her hands, binding the rogue once more in a surge of light. The energy exploded around them, illuminating the dark figures and pushing back the shadows. As the rogue stumbled, the tide of the battle shifted in their favor. With a renewed sense of purpose, Naruko fought alongside her friends, each move a testament to her resolve. The darkness was still there, lurking at the edges of her mind, but she had found a way to push it back, for now. As the last of the rogue shinobi fell, the echoes of victory rang through the air. Naruko turned to her friends, their expressions a mix of relief and triumph. Are you okay? Sakura asked, concern flickering in her eyes. Naruko nodded, the weight on her chest feeling lighter. Yeah. I'm okay. But as they regrouped, she could still feel Dark Kurama watching, waiting for the next opportunity to seize control. She had won this battle, but the war within her was far from over. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Naruko felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. She would face the darkness again, and when she did, she would be ready. Part 10. The village was a flurry of activity as Naruko, Sakura, and their teammates returned from the battle. Villagers rushed to thank them, expressions of relief mingled with gratitude. Yet, even amidst the celebration, a storm brewed inside Naruko. She could feel Dark Kurama's presence lingering in her mind, a dark shadow that never truly dissipated. As they made their way through the streets, Naruko tried to push those thoughts aside. Instead, she focused on the faces of the villagers, their smiles, their joy. They were safe, at least for now, and that was what mattered. But the battle had only been a temporary reprieve. The darkness she fought within herself loomed large, a constant reminder of the struggle ahead. When they finally reached the center of the village, they found Tsunade waiting for them. Her expression was serious, but a hint of relief flickered in her eyes as she took in the sight of Naruko and Sakura, both alive and standing strong after the confrontation. Well done, Tsunade said, her voice firm yet warm. I heard the reports. You handled the rogue shinobi with impressive teamwork. Thanks, Tsunade, Sakura replied, her smile genuine. But we're not out of the woods yet. He mentioned there might be others, and the dark chakra he used felt different. Tsunade's expression darkened. That's troubling news. We need to gather intelligence on any rogue activities in the area. I'll deploy a team to investigate. Naruko stepped forward, her heart racing with urgency. We can help. We should be part of the investigation. If there are more like him, we need to stop them before they can attack again. Tsunade regarded her thoughtfully, weighing her words. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Naruko, but you've just come off a tough battle. You need to rest and recover. I can't just sit back and do nothing while there are threats out there. Naruko insisted, her voice rising. I need to protect my home. I can't let fear control me. Tsunade studied Naruko for a moment, her expression softening. I understand your determination, but you must also recognize your limits. The battle within you is just as important as the battle outside. If you don't address that, you'll be putting yourself and your friends at risk. Naruko nodded, the weight of Tsunade's words settling on her shoulders. She knew she had to face her inner demons, but the thought of doing so terrified her. What if she failed? What if she lost control? Fine, she said finally, her voice steady but her heart racing. But I want to be involved in the investigation. Even if it's just gathering information, I need to know what's happening. Tsunade considered this for a moment before nodding. All right. You can assist in gathering intel. But I want you to promise me you'll take care of yourself. If you feel the darkness creeping in, you need to let me know. I promise, Naruko said, her determination rekindled. She would confront her fears head-on, both within herself and outside in the village. After their meeting, Naruko felt the burden of her worries slowly lift as they strategized with the rest of the team. They decided to split up, assigning pairs to scout different areas of the village and surrounding forest, searching for any signs of dark chakra. The team would reconvene at dusk to share their findings. As they moved into the forest, Naruko could feel the tension in the air. The shadows felt deeper, darker, as if they were alive, watching her every move. But she couldn't let that fear control her. She had her friends by her side, and together they would face whatever awaited them. Naruko, are you ready? Sakura asked, breaking her focus. Yeah, let's do this, Naruko replied, pushing back the lingering doubts. They moved through the trees, their footsteps light on the forest floor. The sunlight filtered through the branches above, casting dappled patterns of light and shadow around them. It was beautiful, yet the beauty felt tainted by the threat they faced. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the air began to shift, a heaviness settling in that made the hairs on the back of Naruko's neck stand up. She stopped, glancing around, her senses heightened. Something was off. Do you feel that? Naruko asked, her voice low. Sakura nodded, her expression serious. Yeah. It feels charged, like the air before a storm. They pressed forward cautiously, their eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. Naruko could feel dark Kurama stirring within her, a twisted anticipation feeding off her anxiety. Let me out, he urged, his voice smooth and enticing. You need my power. We could crush any threat together. No, Naruko replied, gritting her teeth. I won't give in to you. Fighting me only makes you weaker, Naruko. You know it's true. You've felt the power before. You've felt how exhilarating it is. She shook her head, trying to drown out his voice. I'm stronger than you think. I'm not afraid of you. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the trees, snapping Naruko back to reality. She exchanged a panicked glance with Sakura, and without another word, they sprinted toward the sound. They reached a clearing, and what they saw made Naruko's heart drop. A group of rogue shinobi stood there, their dark chakra pulsing around them like a storm. It was a small squad, but they were clearly powerful, their energy radiating danger. Looks like we found our friends, Sakura said, her voice tense. Stay behind me, Naruko instructed, though her own fear clawed at her insides. She couldn't let them hurt Sakura or anyone else in the village. They had to fight. One of the rogue shinobi turned, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Ah, the famous Naruko Uzumaki. I've heard a lot about you. It seems you've been quite the thorn in our side. Naruko clenched her fists, readying herself for battle. We won't let you hurt anyone else. You're outnumbered. The rogue laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down her spine. Outnumbered? Oh, darling, you have no idea what you're up against. Before she could react, the rogue lunged forward, sending a surge of dark energy spiraling toward them. Naruko instinctively pushed Sakura back, focusing her chakra to create a shield. The impact reverberated through her body, knocking her back several steps. She gritted her teeth against the pain, but she couldn't let it stop her. Not now. We need to fight back. Naruko shouted, her heart racing. Let's combine our jutsu. Right. Sakura replied, determination igniting in her eyes. As they fought, the chaos of battle erupted around them. Naruko felt the thrill of combat surge through her, but Dark Kurama's voice was a constant presence, tempting her to unleash his power. You can't hold back, he insisted. You're stronger than this. Embrace me, and you'll crush them. Shut up. Naruko screamed internally, focusing on the battle. She would not let him win. With Sakura at her side, they unleashed a barrage of attacks, their combined chakra lighting up the clearing. The rogue shinobi staggered under their onslaught, surprise flickering across his features. They were holding their ground, and Naruko could feel the bond between them strengthening. But the other rogues were closing in, and as they charged, Naruko felt the tide of the battle shifting. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. Let's regroup. Naruko shouted, glancing back at Sakura. We can't let them surround us. They maneuvered together, dodging attacks and countering with their own, their movements synchronized from years of training and fighting together. But as more dark figures emerged, Naruko could feel her energy waning, fatigue creeping into her limbs. Don't give in. Sakura urged, her voice steady despite the chaos. Remember what we're fighting for. But Naruko felt the whispers of Dark Kurama growing stronger, the darkness clawing at her resolve. You can't win, Naruko. You're losing control, he murmured, a taunting note in his voice. Just give in to me. No, she shouted, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. I am not you. As the battle raged on, Naruko felt the pressure mounting. She had to fight not just for her friends, but for herself. This wasn't just a battle against the rogue shinobi, it was a battle for her very soul. In that moment of clarity, Naruko tapped into her core, focusing on the bonds she had forged, the friendships that defined her. She wouldn't let the darkness take that away. With a surge of energy, she unleashed a powerful jutsu, channeling her chakra into a radiant burst of light that erupted from her hands. The energy pushed back against the shadows, illuminating the darkness and forcing the rogue shinobi to stagger back. Now, Sakura! Naruko shouted, their eyes locking in understanding. Let's finish this. Sakura called back, her determination echoing Naruko's. Together, they combined their jutsu, the light and energy swirling together in a brilliant display that surged forward, crashing into the rogue shinobi with unstoppable force. The impact resonated throughout the clearing. A shockwave of energy that sent the dark figure sprawling. The rogue shinobi gasped, disbelief flashing across his face as the combined power of their friendship overwhelmed him. As the dust settled, Naruko stood tall, breathing heavily but filled with a sense of triumph. They had done it. Together, they had fought back the darkness, both outside and within. But even as they celebrated their victory, Naruko felt the familiar weight of Dark Kurama's presence lingering in the back of her mind. She knew this battle was only the beginning, and the war within her was far from over. Still, as she looked at Sakura, Yamato, and the other shinobi, she felt a flicker of hope ignite in her heart. With their support, she could face the challenges ahead. She could confront the darkness, both inside and outside, and emerge victorious. As they regrouped, Naruko made a silent vow to herself. She would find a way to harness her powers without succumbing to the darkness. She would learn to control the shadows and protect those she loved. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, and Naruko would prove that even in the darkest of times, light could prevail. Part 11. As the echoes of the battle began to fade, Naruko stood in the clearing, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of the fight. The dust settled around her, the air thick with the remnants of their combined chakra. She could see the rogue shinobi lying on the ground, bound and defeated, the darkness that had surrounded him now dissipating like smoke. "Is everyone all right?" Sakura asked, scanning the faces of their teammates. Yamato nodded, relief visible on his features. "We managed to hold our ground." "Great job, both of you." The praise warmed Naruko's heart, but the familiar voice of Dark Kurama echoed in her mind, taunting her as always. "You think this is victory? You're merely delaying the inevitable. They will never truly accept you for what you are." "No." Naruko shouted, clenching her fists at her sides. "I am more than just a vessel for you." "Are you?" Dark Kurama's voice was low, almost mocking. "You can't deny the power I offer. You need me, Naruko. Without me, you're just a girl with dreams, weak and powerless." Naruko gritted her teeth, forcing herself to push his voice aside. She had fought hard to come this far, to reclaim her identity, and she refused to let him take that away. She turned her focus back to Sakura and Yamato, who were discussing their next steps. "We need to inform Tsunade about what happened here," Yamato said, glancing toward the bound rogue shinobi. "We need to make sure he's contained and interrogated for any information about his allies." Sakura nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "Right. We also need to ensure that no one else gets hurt. If there are more like him, we need to prepare." Naruko took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their mission settle on her shoulders. "Let's get him back to the village. We can't waste any time." As they moved to secure the rogue shinobi, Naruko felt a sense of purpose flood through her. They were taking control of the situation, working together as a team, and she wouldn't let Dark Kurama's presence overshadow that. They had just faced darkness head-on and emerged victorious. Once the rogue was secured, they began the journey back to Konoha. The forest that had felt so foreboding moments ago now seemed to offer a path of light, filled with the promise of what they could achieve together. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting the world in hues of orange and pink, and for a moment, Naruko allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. But as they neared the village, that hope was tempered by the awareness of the challenges that lay ahead. What would Tsunade say? Would she see Naruko as a potential threat? Would the villagers ever truly accept her if they knew the truth about her inner battle? "Hey," Sakura said, breaking through her thoughts as they reached the village gates. "You okay?" "Yeah," Naruko replied, though the unease churned in her stomach. "Just thinking." Sakura offered a reassuring smile. "We're in this together, Naruko. You don't have to face anything alone." Naruko nodded, grateful for her friend's unwavering support. As they entered the village, the familiar sounds of life enveloped them, the laughter of children, the calls of vendors, the vibrant atmosphere of home. Yet the weight of her secret felt heavier than ever. Once they arrived at the Hokage Tower, they were greeted by Tsunade, who quickly assessed the situation. The rogue shinobi was brought inside, where he would be contained and interrogated. Tsunade's expression was serious as she listened to the details of their encounter. "Good work, all of you," she said, her tone appreciative but cautious. "But I need to know what we're dealing with. Dark chakra is a serious threat, and we can't afford to underestimate it." The rogue shinobi was placed in a secure cell, bound and powerless. As they prepared to question him, Naruko felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. She could feel Dark Kurama's presence stirring within her, a constant reminder of the battle she had yet to face. "Let me take over, Naruko," he whispered, his voice a seductive caress. "You know they'll never understand. You'll never truly belong until you embrace your true power." No, she shot back, her voice firm. I won't let you control me. Fighting me will only make you weaker, he hissed, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone. You'll always be a vassal, a puppet on strings, unless you let me take the reins. Enough, she yelled internally, her fists clenching at her sides. She had to focus on the task at hand, on the danger that lurked around every corner. The rogue shinobi needed to be questioned, and she wouldn't let her inner turmoil distract her from that. As Tsunade began the interrogation, Naruko stepped back, watching as they sought information about the rogue's allies and their plans. But even as she stood there, she felt the pressure of Dark Kurama's whispers, threatening to consume her. You can't keep me at bay forever, he warned, his voice low and ominous. You're fighting a losing battle. Accept your true nature, and you will find strength beyond anything you've ever known. She shook her head, pushing his voice aside as she focused on the situation unfolding before her. The rogue shinobi grinned, revealing sharp teeth as he faced Tsunade. You think you can intimidate me? He sneered. You don't know who you're dealing with. Tsunade leaned forward, her gaze fierce. You will tell us everything you know, or I will make you wish you had never crossed paths with us. You're a fool if you think you can hide behind your dark powers. The rogue scoffed, his confidence unwavering. You're wasting your time. The darkness is growing stronger, and soon, you'll all be consumed. Naruko's heart raced at his words, the gravity of the situation sinking in. She could feel Dark Kurama stirring within her, his energy swirling like a storm. Don't listen to him, Naruko, Sakura whispered, stepping closer. He's trying to manipulate you. Focus on what we've learned today. Together, we can face any threat. As Tsunade continued the interrogation, Naruko felt a spark of determination ignite within her. They had faced darkness together and emerged victorious. She couldn't let fear control her, she had to fight for her village and for herself. Suddenly, the rogue shinobi leaned back, a smirk on his face. You think you can contain the darkness? You have no idea what's coming. There are forces beyond your control, and soon, they will rise. With that, the rogue's laughter echoed through the room, sending a chill down Naruko's spine. As the tension in the air thickened, Naruko felt Dark Kurama's presence surge within her, his whispers growing louder. You're losing control, Naruko. Let me out. Together, we can conquer them all. No, she shouted, her voice breaking the silence in the room. I won't give in. Tsunade turned, concern etched across her features. Naruko, are you all right? I'm fine, Naruko insisted, though her heart raced. I won't let him win. As the rogue shinobi continued to taunt them, Naruko realized that the battle she faced was not just against external enemies. It was a battle for her very soul, a struggle to remain true to herself amidst the darkness that sought to consume her. With resolve flooding her heart, Naruko vowed that she would fight back against the shadows, both within and outside. She would not allow Dark Kurama to dictate her life. As they prepared for whatever lay ahead, Naruko felt a sense of determination strengthen within her. She would face the darkness, and with her friends by her side, she would rise above it. Together, they would confront the challenges that awaited them, and Naruko would prove that light could prevail, even in the darkest of times. Part 12. The atmosphere in the Hokage Tower was tense, the air thick with the uncertainty of impending danger. Naruko felt the weight of Dark Kurama's presence in her mind, swirling like a storm as she prepared to face the rogue shinobi again. The interrogation had revealed little, but his taunts lingered, fueling her determination to uncover the truth. Tsunade had dismissed the rogue shinobi for the time being, securing him in a more fortified cell. The village needed time to regroup, and Naruko knew they had to prepare for whatever threat lay ahead. The rogue's words about the darkness growing stronger haunted her thoughts, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were only scratching the surface of a much larger problem. Are you all right? Sakura asked, concern etched on her face as they moved away from the interrogation room. You seemed really shaken during that last part. I'm fine, Naruko replied, though she could hear the tremor in her own voice. Just trying to focus. As they walked through the tower, the sounds of the village outside filled the air, a reminder of what they were fighting for. Naruko took a deep breath, trying to ground herself. She needed to be strong, not just for her friends, but for everyone in Konoha. Let's meet back at the training grounds, Yamato suggested, breaking the silence. We should discuss our next steps and how to handle any potential threats. Naruko nodded, feeling a sense of urgency build within her. We can't wait too long. If there are more rogue shinobi out there, we need to act quickly. Once outside, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the village. Naruko felt the familiar energy of Konoha surrounding her, a comforting embrace that reminded her of all the good in her life. She couldn't let the darkness overshadow that. As they approached the training grounds, she caught sight of a few villagers, their faces painted with relief and gratitude for the heroes who had defended them. Look, it's Naruko, a child exclaimed, pointing in her direction. She's amazing. She fought the bad guys. Naruko's heart swelled at the child's admiration. I'm just doing my job, she said with a smile, but the praise felt good, reminding her of her purpose. As they reached the training grounds, the atmosphere shifted, the weight of their mission settling over them. Yamato gathered everyone in a circle, his expression serious. We need to devise a plan for our next steps. The rogue shinobi mentioned that there are more like him. We can't take this lightly. Naruko exchanged glances with Sakura, and she could see the determination reflected in her friend's eyes. We should split up again, Naruko suggested. We need to gather intel and see if there are reports of other rogue activities. If we can find any patterns, we might be able to predict their next move. That's a good idea, Yamato agreed. We should also check in with the other villages. If this darkness is spreading, we need to know how far it's gone. As they discussed their plan, Naruko felt the tension in her chest tighten. The fear of losing control over dark Kurama lurked at the edges of her thoughts, but she pushed it aside. She wouldn't let it dictate her actions. We can't let fear hold us back, she said, trying to instill confidence in her teammates. We've faced danger before, and we can do it again. Sakura nodded, her resolve strong. We'll face this together. Whatever it takes, we'll protect Konoha. With their plan set, they divided into teams, each taking on specific areas of the village and surrounding regions. Naruko partnered with Sakura, and as they set out, Naruko felt a flicker of excitement amidst the uncertainty. This was what she was meant to do, fight for her home, her friends, and herself. As they moved through the streets, the sun began to set, casting an orange hue over Konoha. The village was alive with activity, but the underlying tension remained palpable. Naruko could sense the unease in the air, a warning that danger was lurking just out of sight. Let's start by checking the outskirts of the village, Sakura suggested. If there are any rogue shinobi hiding out, they might be using the forest as cover. Naruko nodded, her heart racing as they made their way toward the edge of the village. The familiar path wound through the trees, and as they entered the forest, the light began to fade. Shadows danced around them, and Naruko felt dark Kurama stirring within her, a low, insistent whisper that pulled at her resolve. Embrace me, he urged, his voice smooth and seductive. You're stronger with my power. You know it's true. No. Naruko shot back mentally, shaking her head. I won't give in to you. I am not just a vessel. Sakura glanced at her, concern flickering in her eyes. Naruko, are you all right? I'm fine, Naruko replied, though the tightness in her chest betrayed her. Just thinking. As they continued deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew heavier, a sense of foreboding settling in. The sounds of the village faded away, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Naruko felt a knot tighten in her stomach, the shadows seeming to reach out for her. Do you think we'll find anything? Sakura asked, her voice low as they pressed on. I hope so, Naruko said, trying to shake off the unease. We need to find out what's happening. We can't let this darkness spread. Just as she spoke, a sudden rustle in the bushes caught their attention. They froze, exchanging wary glances. did you hear that? Sakura whispered. Naruko nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Stay alert. The bushes parted, and a small creature emerged, a rabbit, darting across their path. Naruko let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Just a rabbit, she said, trying to ease the tension. But just as they resumed walking, the atmosphere shifted once more. The forest felt charged, as if a storm was brewing just out of sight. Naruko could feel dark Kurama's energy swirling within her, a reminder of the darkness that lurked in the shadows. Let me out, Naruko, he urged, his voice low and coaxing. Together, we can face any threat. You can't fight them alone. No. Naruko snapped, gritting her teeth. I don't need you. But even as she protested, she could feel the temptation growing stronger. The power was alluring, a promise of strength that called to her deepest desires. You're afraid, he murmured. You know you need me to protect your friends. I will protect them, Naruko said firmly, though doubt lingered in the back of her mind. I'll do it my way. As they pressed on, the shadows thickened, and the air grew heavy with an ominous energy. Naruko felt her heart race, the tension mounting as they neared the edge of the forest. She could sense something lurking just beyond the trees, a darkness that seemed to pulse with malevolence. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a rogue shinobi, their eyes gleaming with dark chakra. Naruko's heart sank as she recognized the signs of danger. Sakura, get ready, she shouted, her instincts kicking in. The rogue lunged at them, dark energy crackling around him like a storm. Naruko instinctively summoned her chakra, ready to fight. But as the rogue struck, Naruko felt dark Kurama surge within her, his power clamoring for release. Let me take control, he urged, his voice filled with desperation. You need me to win. No. Naruko shouted internally. I can do this. With a burst of energy, she pushed back against the darkness, channeling her chakra into a powerful jutsu. The light illuminated the clearing, pushing back the shadows, but as she unleashed her attack, she could feel the tension of the battle rising. Fight, Naruko. Sakura called, her voice filled with determination. We can't let him overpower us. As they fought together, Naruko felt the heat of battle coursing through her. With each strike and counter, she pushed back against the rogue, determined to protect her friend and herself. But the darkness was relentless, and as the rogue pressed forward, Naruko could feel dark Kurama's whispers growing louder. Embrace me, he urged. You can't defeat him alone. No, she cried out, focusing on the bonds she had forged with her friends. I will fight this darkness. I won't let you take control. With a final surge of energy, she unleashed her chakra, a brilliant light that pushed back against the rogue's dark energy. The impact resonated throughout the clearing, illuminating the shadows and forcing the rogue to stagger back. Now, Sakura! Naruko shouted, their eyes locking in understanding. Together, they unleashed a powerful attack, their combined chakra surging forward, overwhelming the rogue shinobi. The energy crashed into him, binding him in a surge of light that illuminated the forest. As the dust settled, Naruko stood tall, her heart racing with a mix of triumph and uncertainty. They had fought back the darkness once more, but she could still feel it lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike. As the rogue lay defeated, Naruko turned to Sakura, her heart pounding. We did it. Sakura smiled, relief flooding her expression. Yeah, we did. But we need to stay vigilant. There could be more out there. Naruko nodded, her determination reigniting. She would face whatever came next, both in the world around her and within the shadows of her own heart. As they prepared to head back to the village, Naruko made a silent vow. She would not let fear dictate her life. With her friends by her side, she would learn to harness her powers and confront the darkness without losing herself in the process. Together, they would rise above the challenges ahead, proving that even in the darkest of times, light could prevail. Part 13. As Naruko and Sakura walked back through the forest, the weight of the recent battle hung heavy in the air. The victory over the rogue shinobi had felt exhilarating, but the shadows of doubt still lingered in Naruko's mind, whispering reminders of the darkness she was constantly fighting within herself. "Are you sure you're okay?" Sakura asked, casting a sidelong glance at Naruko as they navigated the narrow path through the trees. "You seemed a bit off during the fight." "I'm fine," Naruko insisted, though she could feel the tension coiling in her stomach. "It's just a lot to process, you know? First the rogue, and now the thought of more of them out there. It's overwhelming." Sakura nodded, her expression sympathetic. "I get that. It's scary. But we've faced danger before, and we've always come out on top. We can do this." "I know," Naruko said, a flicker of determination sparking within her. "I just wish I could shake off this feeling. It's like the darkness is always just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to break through." As they emerged from the trees, the familiar sights of Konoha greeted them, the village alive with activity. The sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air, a comforting reminder of what they were fighting to protect. But even amidst the vibrant atmosphere, Naruko felt the lingering presence of dark Kurama within her, whispering doubts and temptations that clawed at her resolve. "Don't let them distract you," he hissed in her mind. "You know what you need to do. Embrace the power I offer." "No." Naruko snapped internally, shaking her head as if to physically dislodge his voice. "I won't let you control me." "Control? It's about strength, Naruko," he replied, his tone smooth and seductive. "Together, we can become unstoppable. You know it in your heart." "Shut up," she shouted in her mind, frustration boiling over. She had fought too hard to regain her sense of self. She wouldn't let him drag her back into darkness. As they reached the village center, the pair was met with cheers from the villagers who had witnessed their earlier battle. Relief washed over Naruko, but it was quickly tempered by the internal struggle that continued to rage within her. "Look! It's Naruko," a young boy exclaimed, pointing excitedly. "She's a hero." The child's words made Naruko smile, but the joy felt fleeting. Could she really call herself a hero when a part of her still wrestled with darkness? She couldn't let them see her as anything but strong. "Thank you, everyone," Naruko called out, raising her hand in a wave. "But we still have work to do. We can't let our guard down." The villagers nodded, their expressions serious but filled with admiration. As they made their way through the crowd, Naruko caught glimpses of her friends, of the lives they were protecting, of the bonds they had forged. It was enough to strengthen her resolve, even against the whispers that threatened to pull her under. "Let's head to the Hokage Tower," Sakura suggested, leading the way. "We need to report our findings to Tsunade and discuss our next steps." As they entered the tower, the familiar scent of parchment and ink greeted them. Shizune was busy at her desk, sorting through papers, and she looked up with a smile as they approached. "Welcome back. I heard you took care of the rogue shinobi." "Great work, both of you," Shizune said, her voice filled with warmth. "Thanks, Shizune," Naruko replied, though the weight of her thoughts pressed down on her. "But there might be more like him. We need to be prepared." Shizune's expression turned serious. "I'll inform Tsunade. She'll want to hear everything you found out." As they waited, Naruko felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. She wanted to be strong, to show that she could handle the challenges ahead. But the nagging whispers of dark Kurama continued to echo in her mind, a constant reminder of the battle she fought within herself. When Tsunade finally entered the room, her demeanor was serious but focused. "Naruko, Sakura," she said, her voice firm. "I need a full report on what happened. We must assess the threat and make a plan moving forward." The two friends exchanged a glance, and Naruko took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We faced a rogue shinobi today. He was using dark chakra and claimed there are more like him. He seemed to draw strength from chaos, and we can't let that continue." Tsunade listened intently, her expression serious. "This is troubling news. We need to gather more information on this dark chakra and how it's affecting the area. It could be connected to a larger network of rogue shinobi. Naruko felt her heart race at the thought. We can help gather intel. If we split into teams again, we might be able to track down any unusual chakra signatures. Good idea, Tsunade agreed, her gaze penetrating. But Naruko, I want you to focus on controlling your own power as well. I've noticed you've been struggling with the darkness inside you. This battle is not just outside, it's within you as well. I know, Naruko replied, her voice filled with determination. But I won't let it consume me. I'm going to find a way to harness it, to use it for good. Tsunade nodded, her expression softening slightly. Remember, Naruko, you're not alone in this. You have friends who will support you, no matter what. As they discussed their strategy, Naruko felt a renewed sense of hope rising within her. She would face this challenge head-on, not just for herself, but for her friends and the village they protected. Once their plan was set, Naruko felt a sense of purpose flood through her. They would gather intel, confront the darkness, and protect Konoha from any threats. But as they prepared to leave the tower, Naruko couldn't shake the feeling that the true battle was still ahead. The darkness within her was a constant presence, but with her friends at her side, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they stepped out into the bright light of the village, Naruko made a silent vow. She would not let fear dictate her life. With each step, she felt stronger, more determined to confront the challenges before her. Together, they would rise against the darkness, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the bonds of friendship could shine brighter than any shadow. Part 14. As the sun rose the next day, casting a warm golden glow over Konoha, Naruko felt a renewed sense of purpose fill her. The village was buzzing with life, but beneath the surface, she could feel the tension lingering from the previous day's battle. Dark chakra still hung in the air like a shadow, and she knew they had to act quickly to uncover any remaining threats. Are you ready? Sakura asked, her voice breaking through Naruko's thoughts as they gathered outside the Hokage Tower with their teammates. Yeah, Naruko replied, trying to shake off the lingering anxiety. She felt the weight of her inner battle pressing on her, but she refused to let it hold her back. Let's do this. As they divided into teams, Yamato gathered everyone's attention. Our first step is to investigate the forest and nearby areas for any signs of dark chakra. We'll split into pairs, so keep your senses sharp and report anything unusual. Naruko and Sakura were paired together, and Naruko felt a surge of gratitude for her friend's unwavering support. Let's start near the edge of the village, Sakura suggested, leading the way. As they walked, Naruko's mind raced with thoughts of their mission. The previous day's victory over the rogue shinobi had felt empowering, but the darkness within her still loomed, a reminder of the internal battle she was fighting. She could feel dark Kurama stirring in her mind, his whispers more insistent than ever. Embrace me, he urged, his voice smooth and tempting. You know you can't face this alone. The darkness is your ally. No. Naruko snapped internally, shaking her head. I won't let you take control. Sakura glanced at her, concern flickering in her eyes. You okay? You seem a little distracted. I'm fine, Naruko replied, forcing a smile. Just thinking about everything we need to do. As they approached the edge of the village, Naruko's senses heightened, scanning the area for any signs of dark chakra. The forest loomed ahead, the trees tall and imposing. The sunlight filtering through the leaves created a dappled pattern on the ground, but the beauty of the scene was overshadowed by the sense of foreboding that filled the air. We should split up and cover more ground, Sakura suggested. Let's meet back here in an hour. Sounds good, Naruko agreed, though the thought of separating made her heart race. But she knew they needed to be thorough. They set off in different directions, Naruko moving deeper into the forest. As she walked, the sounds of the village faded away, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the calls of distant birds. Yet, the deeper she ventured, the heavier the air felt, a tension settling around her like a shroud. Taking a deep breath, she focused on her surroundings, tuning into the vibrations of the forest. She could feel the chakra swirling around her, a mix of light and dark that set her nerves on edge. Dark Kurama's presence was like a weight on her chest, reminding her of the internal battle that still raged within. "You can't ignore me forever, Naruko," he whispered, his voice smooth and insidious. "You know I'm right. You need my power to truly protect your friends." "I don't need you," she shot back, though the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her confidence. "I can do this on my own." As she continued her search, Naruko stumbled upon a small clearing. The air felt charged, an unsettling energy prickling against her skin. She sensed something was off, a dark presence lurking just beyond the trees. Her instincts kicked in, and she began to scan the area for any signs of danger. Just as she was about to step deeper into the clearing, a low growl echoed from the shadows, causing her heart to race. "Show yourself," Naruko called out, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. From the darkness emerged a figure, cloaked in shadows, their eyes glowing with a sinister light. It was another rogue shinobi, and this one seemed far more menacing than the last. The dark chakra radiated off him like a palpable force, and Naruko's heart raced. "You shouldn't have come here, little girl," he sneered, taking a step forward. "This forest belongs to us now." Naruko felt the fear creeping back, but she pushed it aside. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted, summoning her chakra, ready to fight. The rogue laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the clearing. "You think you can defeat me? You're just a pawn in a much larger game." "No," Naruko retorted, her anger flaring. "I'm not a pawn. I'm a ninja of Konoha, and I will protect my home." With a burst of energy, she charged at the rogue, her fists crackling with chakra. As she closed the distance, she unleashed a powerful attack, but the rogue sidestepped with surprising agility, countering with a swift strike of his own. Naruko barely managed to dodge, the force of his attack sending a shockwave through the air. "You'll have to do better than that," he taunted, a twisted grin spreading across his face. Determined, Naruko focused her chakra, channeling it into her next move. She could feel the heat rising within her, the power building as she prepared for another attack. "I won't back down," she shouted, unleashing a surge of energy that lit up the clearing. The rogue's expression shifted to one of surprise as the blast struck him, pushing him back. But he quickly regained his footing, dark chakra swirling around him like a tempest. "Impressive, but it won't be enough." As the battle intensified, Naruko felt the darkness within her stir, Dark Kurama's voice growing louder. "Let me out, Naruko. You can't defeat him alone." "No," she cried, shaking her head as she fought to maintain control. "I can do this." But the rogue was relentless, and as he lunged at her again, Naruko felt her energy begin to wane. She needed to find a way to turn the tide of the battle. With a determined breath, she recalled the seals she had studied. She had to focus, to harness her power without succumbing to the darkness. "I can do this," she shouted, channeling her chakra into a binding technique. The energy flared around her, forming a bright light that illuminated the clearing. The rogue stumbled back, caught off guard by her sudden surge of strength. "Stay back," Naruko shouted, her voice steady as she unleashed the technique. The binding energy surged forward, wrapping around the rogue shinobi and restraining him in a cocoon of light. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Naruko's heart raced as she fought to maintain control over the technique, feeling the dark energy swirling around her, threatening to break free. But she pushed back, focusing on the bonds she had with her friends and the strength that resided within her. With a final burst of energy, she tightened the seals around the rogue, forcing him to the ground. "You won't hurt anyone else," she declared, her voice ringing with confidence. As the rogue struggled against the bindings, his eyes widened in disbelief. "You think you've won?" he spat, but the malice in his voice faltered. "This is just the beginning." Naruko felt the weight of his words settle over her, a chill running down her spine. She had won this battle, but the war against the darkness was far from over. Just then, she heard a familiar voice call out from the trees. "Naruko! Are you all right?" It was Sakura, rushing into the clearing, followed closely by Yamato and the others. Relief washed over Naruko as she realized her friends had come to support her. "I'm fine," Naruko shouted, her voice filled with determination. "I captured him." Sakura's eyes widened as she took in the scene. "Great job. But we need to make sure he doesn't escape. Let's secure him." As they worked together to restrain the rogue and prepare him for transport back to Konoha, Naruko felt a sense of camaraderie surge within her. Her friends had come through for her once again, proving that together, they could face any challenge. But even as they prepared to leave, the rogue's last words echoed in Naruko's mind. The darkness was still out there, waiting to strike again. And so was Dark Kurama, lurking just beneath the surface, ready to seize any moment of weakness. As they walked back through the forest, Naruko felt a renewed sense of determination. She would confront the challenges ahead, both inside and out. With her friends by her side, she would learn to control the darkness without losing herself in the process. Together, they would rise against the shadows, proving that even in the darkest times, the light of friendship would always shine through. Part 15. As Naruko and her teammates emerged from the dense forest, the familiar sights and sounds of Konoha enveloped them. The village was vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the dark energies they had faced. Yet, even amidst the cheers and gratitude of the villagers, Naruko felt a heavy weight pressing down on her, one that reminded her of the internal battle she still faced with Dark Kurama. The rogue shinobi was securely contained, bound in a specialized seal that Tsunade had devised. As they approached the Hokage Tower, Naruko couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. The rogue had mentioned that this was just the beginning, and the shadows of his words lingered in her mind. "Let's go report back," Yamato said, his voice steady and firm as they entered the tower. "We need to update Tsunade on our findings." Once inside, the atmosphere shifted from the chaos of the village to the focused intensity of the Hokage's office. Tsunade was waiting for them, her expression serious as she assessed the situation. "Excellent work, everyone," she said, nodding at each of them. "I heard you managed to capture another rogue shinobi." "What did he say?" "He mentioned that there are more like him," Naruko began, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling within her. "He claimed that darkness is growing stronger and that this is just the beginning." Tsunade's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing. "That's troubling. We need to gather as much intelligence as we can. This darkness might be connected to something larger, a force we haven't yet encountered." Sakura stepped forward, her expression determined. "We need to investigate any rogue activity in the surrounding villages. If this darkness is spreading, we have to find the source and stop it." "Agreed," Tsunade said, her voice firm. "I'll organize teams to scout the area. But first, we need to extract as much information as we can from the rogue shinobi." As they prepared for the next phase of their mission, Naruko felt the familiar stir of Dark Kurama within her, his voice a constant whisper. "You can't let them dictate your actions, Naruko. You know you're stronger with me. Together, we could crush any opposition." "No," she shouted internally, frustration boiling over. "I will not let you take control." Tsunade raised an eyebrow at Naruko's sudden outburst, concern creeping into her expression. "Naruko, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she insisted, forcing a smile. But inside, the battle raged on. She was tired of fighting against the darkness, tired of feeling like a prisoner in her own mind. As they moved to the interrogation room, Naruko tried to focus on the task at hand. They needed to gather information, to understand the threat they faced. But as she stepped into the room, the rogue shinobi's gaze met hers, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You think you've won?" he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You know nothing of the true darkness that awaits you." Naruko clenched her fists, determination igniting within her. "We'll find out the truth. And you'll tell us everything." As Tsunade began the interrogation, Naruko felt the tension in the room mount. She watched as Tsunade pushed the rogue for information, her voice steady and commanding. But with each question, the rogue remained defiant, taunting them with half-truths and evasive answers. "You'll never stop what's coming," he hissed, a sinister glint in his eyes. "The darkness is alive, and it will consume everything you hold dear." With each word, Naruko felt dark Kurama stirring within her, his whispers growing louder. "He's right, Naruko. You need me. Together, we could be unstoppable." "Enough," she shouted in her mind, anger flaring as she struggled to maintain control. "I will not let you win." The rogue continued to smirk, his confidence unwavering. "You think you're strong enough to face the darkness? You're just a child playing with forces beyond your comprehension." But in that moment, something within Naruko shifted. She had fought too hard to let fear dictate her life. She was more than just a vessel for Dark Kurama, she was a ninja of Konoha, and she would protect her village at all costs. With a surge of determination, she stepped forward, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I will face the darkness. I will confront the challenges ahead. You may think you know fear, but you've never faced what I've faced." Tsunade looked at Naruko with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Naruko, remember that strength comes from within. You can control the darkness without succumbing to it." The rogue sneered, but Naruko could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You're all fools," he spat. "You have no idea what's coming for you." With a sudden movement, he broke free from his restraints, dark chakra surging around him like a storm. Naruko's heart raced as she realized they had underestimated him. "Get back!" Tsunade shouted, moving to confront the rogue, but he was already launching an attack. In that instant, Naruko felt Dark Kurama's presence surge within her, urging her to release his power. "Let me out. Together, we can crush him." But this time, she fought back. "No. I won't let you take control." With every ounce of strength, she summoned her chakra, channeling it into a brilliant light that erupted from her body. The force of it pushed back against the rogue's dark energy, illuminating the room in a radiant glow. "Now, Sakura!" Naruko shouted, knowing that their combined strength was their best weapon. Sakura stepped beside her, summoning her own chakra as they focused their energy together. The light surged forward, enveloping the rogue in a binding force that contained his dark energy. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as the rogue struggled against their combined power, disbelief etched across his face. "You can't do this," he yelled, desperation creeping into his tone. "Yes, we can." Naruko shouted back, her determination shining through. "Together, we are stronger than any darkness." With one final surge of energy, they pushed the rogue back, forcing him into submission. The dark chakra dissipated, leaving only the light of their victory. As the dust settled, Naruko felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, but it was accompanied by a sense of triumph. They had fought back the darkness once more, and together, they had proven their strength. Tsunade stepped forward, a proud smile on her face. "Excellent work, both of you. This is a significant victory, but we still have much to learn about the forces we're up against." Naruko nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and resolve. She had faced the darkness within and outside herself, and she had emerged stronger for it. The battle was not over, but she knew she would continue to fight, not just for herself, but for her friends and the village she loved. As they prepared to leave the interrogation room, Naruko took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin. The shadows within her still lingered, but she was ready to face them. With her friends by her side, she would rise against any threat, proving that even in the darkest of times, the bonds of friendship could shine brightly, illuminating the path forward. As they stepped out of the tower and into the bustling streets of Konoha, Naruko made a silent vow to herself. She would confront the challenges ahead, embrace her identity, and learn to harness the darkness within her without losing herself. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, and Naruko would prove that light could prevail against the shadows. That's the end of the story.